Hi there.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, good. So I just have a few questions for you guys. It looks like you guys are out here. How many unions are here in Washington, D.C. with you? You're part of NEA, right?
Right, well actually I'm part of the Amalgamated Transit Union, which represents all the Metro bus drivers, train operators, station managers for the entire Metro system, and also the Montgomery County Education Association, which is the teachers in Montgomery County. There's other people here from Brooklyn, there's people from Howard University, Jack over there is from the Fairfax Education Association in Northern Virginia.
So you have plenty of union workers out here with you. That's good to hear. So Americans accumulate about $900 billion in student debt, and they're claimed to be, your sign says that they are indentured servants, essentially. Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Well, first of all, let's look at the history of higher education in the United States. And up until about 30 or 40 years ago, most higher education, going to college, getting a degree, and to become a teacher, to become an engineer or a scientist or an English teacher or something like that, for the most part, education was very inexpensive. If you went to the major public universities like in California or in New York State, essentially there was no tuition. You paid a fee and something for your books. In the last 30 years, this has dramatically changed. All the private universities and public universities are very expensive. So now instead of graduating from college owing maybe $1,000 or actually being debt-free, now many students are graduating owing $20, $30, $40, $50,000 or more. And they're basically going to spend most of their lives paying off those debts. So in that sense, we mean they're indentured servants.
Very good. Okay. And some of the statistics you have on your handout here are pretty startling. About 317,000 waiters and waitresses have college degrees. 365,000 cashiers have college degrees. Many college students are complaining that they're winding up with degrees of worthlessness, essentially. Do you have a reason why this is all happening? I mean, do you have a couple of things? Why do you think this is occurring?
Well, for one thing, the number of good jobs in the United States has been deteriorating. One is in the last several years since the recession began, or the little depression, however you want to call it, there's been tremendous numbers of cutbacks in government jobs, particularly of teachers, particularly of educational workers, particularly of social workers. Those people who had jobs provided for the social net in the United States, which has been in existence since the 1930s, those type of jobs are slowly but surely being eliminated. A lot of people are training for them, but they're not able to get them, basically. Good union jobs in manufacturing are disappearing in this country. Good engineering jobs are being outsourced to India or China.
Yeah.
So you have the whole American working class is basically on a downward spiral. I mean, for my own family, my older kids got decent jobs. My younger kids are working as waitresses and bartenders, basically. And family after family that are experiencing that type of situation.
And you can see it just in the everyday family, too. It seems that a lot of people are working longer hours, they're looking for lower wages.
Right. When I was growing up, my father had an auto mechanic. He had a good job, a union-paying job. He was able to raise his family, send our kids to college, and buy a home. On those jobs, my mother spent most of her time taking care of the children. Today, a family needs both mother and father working, and maybe even sometimes sending the kids out to work a part-time job to hold the family together and pay for education.
Right.
So it's been a dramatic change in the hours of work required to support a family in this country. Basically going from 40 or 45 hours up to 80 or 90 hours. And that helps undermine the families, basically.
Right. Exactly, and everyone's well-being, exactly. So I've also learned too that an average family's expenditures too also have seemed to go up a lot. Them paying for just electricity and gas and clothing and transportation and any other commodities, necessities, food.
See, one thing in this country, there's a tremendous amount of racism, basically. White workers have been convinced that a lot of the problems are because of immigrant workers, because of black workers. Now a lot of people are realizing these problems of unemployment, of drugs, crime, are affecting not only African Americans or Hispanics, but affecting the whole population. And so we see in the coming period of time, we have to try and get people to join together, fight racism, fight these differences that exist among the working class, and unite to fight for jobs, for decent education, for health insurance for all.
And do you see some parallels there with the Occupy Wall Street movement?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the Occupy Wall Street has brought to the forefront
degree, you know, which I just,
Somewhat separately but related is, what I understand is across the United States, colleges and universities are becoming more competitive over what their campuses look like. So they're investing a lot in capital improvements, but they're buying things like stadiums and building these big monstrosities, supposedly for students and student learning, but that's not really what the money's here for, so that they're in competition. So it becomes not a place of learning, but a place of competition for a different set of students or a different set of researchers. A lot of the drug companies are involved in campuses also, and so there's a race to get a lot of this corporate money on campus, passing those costs along to students and run it to the students, not necessarily benefiting education, higher education.
so you kind of feel that the funds aren't being allocated in the right areas.
I doubt they are. I think even federal funds are not going to college campuses. They're more going to the war effort overseas.
Right. You know, yeah, a lot of Democrats and socialists in Congress, there aren't many socialists in Congress, but, you know, complain that, you know, we seem to have money for military expansion and defense spending, but for some reason we have to make these cuts to healthcare and education.
I think corporate America is running Congress.
Yeah. So on your yellow sheet here, you have Law 78, and that's happening in Canada. And I'm aware of most of the protests going on there. It started to seem with a protest against the increased tuition hikes, but now it seems to have expanded. Just can you tell me a little bit about that law, what it contains, what they're doing?
Well, basically, the response of the government initially to the protest was to meet with some of the student leaders and try and see if they could work out some sort of accommodation. When it became clear that the government was not willing to reduce the rate at which tuition increases would occur, the students escalated their demonstrations into a more of a daily occurrence. At that point, the government passed a new law, Law 78, which basically outlaws protests within 50 meters of the entrance of the university campus. Students basically ignored that, and many civil libertarian groups in Canada, many workers groups joined with them in protesting those laws, as well as the tuition increases. As a result of that, 6,000 to 8,000 people were arrested for violating the law. Now the government is saying they're going to call a special election in the fall, basically to try and convince the population that they should support increased tuitions, they should support cutbacks in education. So there's going to be a political struggle over that in Canada, particularly in Quebec in the fall.
Right. It seems to have evolved into a free speech issue. You know,
That's part of it, but I think the bottom line is a lot of working people in Canada realize that their children do not have much of a future if these current austerity programs continue to affect them as well. They're rebelling against that.
If you could do one more question for me, and speak a little bit louder if you could too,
Sure.
just because of all the traffic here. Do you draw any parallels between these instances here in America and the austerity measures trying to be pushed through over in the European Union about the euro?
No, I think they're definitely similar. I think the programs that are going on in Greece and Spain in particular are more severe than what's happened in the United States so far. But if the euro collapses and Europe moves into a recession, which seems highly likely at this point, I think you'll see intensified austerity measures in this country. The politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, have given up on the idea of stimulating the economy and are intent talking about debt reduction, deficit reduction, and austerity. And I think eventually that will stir a tremendous response of working people in this country to fight against those attacks on their living standards.
I agree, and I learned a good quote. It's a recession when your neighbor's out of work, but it's a depression when you are. So soon enough, it seems maybe people will learn and stand up. Well, thank you so much for your time. I enjoyed talking to you guys.
Yeah, thank you.